Arteta! What a strike! What a screamer!
Zola! What a fantastic goal! Arsenal back in it!
Here's Limpar, lines it up, finds the net. Arsenal are in front.
Party rocking in the house tonight. You've got to fight for your right to party. Party all night long. My girl wants to party all the time, party all the time, party all the time. Insert party pun here. Party has arrived at Arsenal. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot with the Bob on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Whew! We did it. We got through the intro, we got through deadline day, and we got Thomas Partey over the line, just as everyone expected just a day ago. So, we're going to break down the deadline day deal to acquire Thomas Partey. We will discuss the Sheffield United game in the context of the Partey arrival. So in other words, I think the big news from the Sheffield United game really was the period of the game where we played the back four with Pepe on the right and Oba through the middle and Saka on the left and Willian kind of in behind them. And we'll talk about Partey in the context of that moment in that match and how we might set up going forward. We may be forced to touch on Mesut Ozil, and it is so typical of the situation with Mesut Ozil that on a day after a major announcement, he has found a way to put himself front and center, and we can discuss whether that is a cynical move, a good move. I mean, maybe we don't discuss it at all because it just gets to the point where no one's going to agree and everyone's going to be mad at each other, and the fact is, like, this is all going to peter out in about 8 months or so, and I, for one, can't really wait. So maybe we won't come to that, but I'm at least referencing that it's in the news so we can acknowledge that it exists. And maybe that is all that needs to happen. We will sum up the window. We'll give our grades for the window and all of that. I will let you know that tomorrow on Patreon, Clive and I will be doing a scouting video of Thomas Partey, breaking down clips of his every play, of his every move. Literally dozens of clips of his will be scouted and analyzed in full. So you don't want to miss that, or you do want to miss that. But if you don't want to miss that, you can sign up for our Patreon. And I hope you joined us for the live stream yesterday. I think there were over 32,000 of you that did so. So thank you for that. It was a lot of fun. 4 hours of just celebrating the madness together. And I love everybody who was in there and commenting and stuff. We had a great time. So Paul's on Twitter, Pause My Pants. Hello, Pause.
Woohoo.
Clive's on Twitter, Clive PFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello, hello.
And Tim's on Twitter, Stillberto. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
Hello, indeed. Okay, so I guess first things first, Clive. This is a player you have a huge affinity for, and tomorrow on the scouting video, we'll get to see more granular detail on what he's doing and what we like. But as a global point of this, just give me your top-line feelings about 50 million plus whatever rumor you believe about the wage on a 4-year deal for Thomas Partey. How excited are you, both in the near term and the long term, about the signing?
Yeah, it's always funny when Arsenal make a signing. They really do break down the financials like no other team. I always feel that. I read that the signing was going to cost over 100 million over the next 4 years, whatever it is. And it just sort of bores me, really, how everything's always financial with us. And I like to look at it just as a football thing. Football-wise, I have my own biases. This player, I've liked this player for a while, but I don't like being defined by players, ones I like or even dislike. But I like this type of player in the midfield, and there was a period when I questioned my thoughts around having a player like this in our midfield because the game is moving away from the more physical animals per se. You've got to be light on your feet. You've got to be able to play on certain positions. You've got to have more than just strength, right? So you've got to be tactically aware. You've got to be able to drift passes and different angles and diagonals and fire for the lines and carry and play on the half turn. And fortunately, this guy can do a lot of that, as well as the physical attributes that made since Vieira, when he changed what our midfielder looks like. I think we've missed a lot of those things, and we'll go into it a little bit tomorrow. But it's just the way he approaches moments of collision and duels, and he really does engage with relish. And I'm not saying Nobby Styles relish. I'm talking about the way he sprints in. He gets there early so he can perform a move, a trick, a pass. And so there's a physical aspect to him that allows him to bring out the technical aspect to him. And I think that's really good. And I said yesterday about the emotional side to having a player like that and how comfortable that player makes you feel if you're another player and what they make you do. And then if you watch, we're going to tomorrow, but if you watch the videos, I always look for cause and effect and how he affects other people. And I think we're going to like him. I hope he's as good as I think he is. I've seen him with my own eyes. I think we're going to like him, and I think we need him. And I think that'll become apparent. And I just hope for all our sakes, because we're all excited, that it works out.
Yeah. I mean, every transfer is a risk, right? I think the mistake we make is thinking some transfers are a risk and some transfers aren't, and some are sure things and some are speculative. There is a range, but they're all a risk. I mean, I can think of high-profile transfers in the past that I thought were shoo-ins for success that didn't work out stunningly. And the opposite has happened as well. Transfers that you may have laughed off at a time, and they turned out to be fantastic transfers. I think that we can all point to those specific ones, but with respect to this, Paul, I want to be clear about something. I think that Thomas Partey improves us right now. There is no debate about that in my view. I think he makes us better. I think he will make this season more enjoyable to watch and more successful. What the ceiling on that success is, I think depends on how elite he is at the things people think he brings to the team. The debate about whether it's a smart move from a squad building standpoint is a little more nuanced, a little more complicated, and probably one for another time. And I think it is one that will evolve over time. I don't want it to be post hoc, though. I don't want it to be he shows up and he's excellent for 3-4 years, and then we say, oh, see, it was a great squad building move, and vice versa. I don't want him to show up and maybe underperform and then say, see, we told you so. I think that there is a way you can look at this and say that spending £50 million and potentially upwards of $200,000 per week is a very, very, very big outlay at the top of the market right now. And that means that you are expecting top of the market performance. And especially given that the player most likely will not be sold at the end of this contract, or certainly not for any, sizable fee, what you are expecting is elite top of the market performance. So what I will ask you is, in your view, can Thomas Partey come into our central midfield and deliver elite top of the market performance that is paradigm shifting for Arsenal in the middle of the park? And by the way, I'm not asking that as a loaded question, because there are people that definitely believe he can do that, and I am optimistic that it could happen, but I think that's what we are paying for. So do you think that is what we are going to see?
I think, yes, it probably is what we're going to see. This deal will only be looked back on as a good deal, not just if he plays well for himself, but if he enables basically everything ahead of him on the pitch to start to function the way the talent ahead of him should be able to combine, which it hasn't been able to. If he not only performs at the levels we project, but he enables Aubameyang, Pepe, Ceballos, our wing backs to get forward and play with freedom, Willian, whatever that mix may be, that Arteta can now start picking the players ahead of Partey on the basis of who are the best players to create, rather than who can I put on there without capsizing the boat defensively. If he can do that, it's not enough that he plays well. He kind of has to be the guy we've been waiting for. I think what makes me optimistic that he can be that guy, I don't love the deal, but maybe we had to do this because, A, we didn't have another good big deal to do for a player who was ready. Now, is he ready? We'll see, but he probably is. I mean, he's been playing at this level. He's incredibly well drilled as a DM-CM, and I think he's a 6'8". I mean, I've heard him called a box-to-box, I've heard him called a DM. I think it depends what's going on the pitch, but he can do both. He's certainly, to me, he's not a box-to-box. He's going to play up to the edge of the box, but he's really going to play from deep up the pitch. He's a risk taker. He's risk reward. His passing, nothing about him is perfectly clean. I think he's kind of a complete midfielder, as long as you don't think he's super technically clean. He's kind of he's going to spill the ball. He's going to make mistakes. He's not going to be the cleanest passer out there, but he's going to make shit happen, and he's going to impose himself on the pitch. And I think the other reason in the pop psych space, I think the other reason he might just be ready is because this move has been something that's been afoot since apparently 2018. God bless Francis Kajigao, but he's been promoting and pushing, they left their dossiers on the desk before we let them go. This is one that he's championed. Now, it's not like Partey wasn't known to the planet and that Arteta wouldn't have known him. But the plus side is being ready is also a mental thing. The club ready that they know how to use you, that they truly understand what they're getting. So we should at this point. We've been on the case for 2 years. And he has mentally been thinking about coming to Arsenal. I'm sure he was thinking about other clubs. The way, post hoc, to use your word, everybody rewrites their narrative. But it's very clear he's been thinking about us for 2 years, probably 3 or 4 or 5 other clubs, but definitely us. He's been watching our games, apparently. And this move has been on a couple of times. So he's mentally ready, and it's the right time for him. He's at a perfect age to be ready and to contribute. And he's still a tremendous footballer and specimen from whatever I can see. And I did blow the whole Y Scout budget on his videos, so I should know.
Yeah.
But no, I'm very excited about him.
Good.
Don't love the deal, but if he can make everything ahead of him click and enable it, it may be an okay investment. But I think there's going to be a very exciting player for us for a few years.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, like, you can love a player and love that he's at your club and think the deal to get him wasn't a good one. Vice versa, you can hate a player or think he's not a good fit for your club, but recognize that the deal was low risk. I mean, Lucas Torreira is a great example. Never really worked out. I like the player a lot, but it didn't really work out. But due to his age, due to his price, due to his wage, it looks like when all is said and done between loan fees and what we'll recoup in a subsequent sale, that he's going to wind up being a player that we get our money back for with it having not worked out. When you spend this much, what you need from that player for it to look like a good deal from an economic and squad building standpoint is a little different. But none of that has to change your evaluation of the player himself, right? Like, if Thomas Partey cost £1 and his wages were £1, that wouldn't change what we hope he will do on the pitch and our evaluation of his performances. All it would change is our evaluation of the deal, right? So I want to be clear that you can love that we got this player, think that he makes us better right away, and still, on the other side of the transaction, have some questions that will be borne out one way or the other over time. And all I'm trying to position this as, Tim, is to say that I think this player makes us a lot better, and I'm super excited he's here. Whether this deal winds up looking like value is probably going to depend on him producing at a fairly elite level, or maybe top of the market level, and he has it in him to do that. If you want to go to Arsblog News, there's a great sort of data and data viz article by John Allington on there breaking down who this player is, what he can do, what's special about him. If you're a patron, you want to go into the Discord. Matt, Giant Gunners, posted a fantastic data review of him that gives a slightly different perspective. But all in all, I think that it's exciting. So let me ask you 2 quick questions, Tim. The first is, do you think it is fair for me to set up that duality of analysis, that you can analyze the deal transactionally and then you can analyze the player performance-wise, and those 2 things can be separate, and you can be really excited about the player in extraction from the deal? And then the second thing is the real X factor here, which is this is a very exciting player who has been playing for a sort of a kind of iconoclastic, unique coach with a very unique system. And I think we have to at least discuss what we think could be the same or better or different moving away from a Simeone system. So first things first, how do you feel about the transaction and the player and the ability to sort of divorce those two and look at one in the absence of the other?
Yeah, 100%. And that's exactly how I feel. Now, I don't know enough about the player to be enormously attached or anything like that. Everything I've seen and read about his attributes, yes, absolutely, sounds like something Arsenal can use. Frankly, there's a lot of things the Arsenal midfield is missing, and I don't think it's difficult to really kind of significantly upgrade there, because there's not much there, quite frankly. But yeah, everything that I'm reading, big tick in terms of attributes. I feel the same as Paul. I don't love the deal, and I'll tell you why. And with all the caveats, Elliot, that you've issued as well, that doesn't mean I don't like the player. Or I don't think he'll be a hit or anything. I don't know, quite frankly. But one thing I do know, he has to be a hit. For Arsenal, has to. They have Arsenal have cashed all of their chips now in late prime players, which is something they did 2.5 years ago and it didn't work, which is not to say it won't work this time. It might, but it has to. And here's why. Let's set this out very clearly. Arsenal didn't think they had the money for this deal until the last day of the transfer window. What does that tell you? You can give me all of the spiel you like about brinkmanship, about we always wanted to do it on the last day of the window. I also understand that they had a number 1 and 2 target in terms of Auer and Partey. And you could look at it and say, well, okay, they went for the number 1 target. They didn't get it. They went for the number 2 target as a backup. Fine, and I definitely have sympathy is not the right word. I understand that view, but if you really, really want a player and you think you can afford him and he has a release clause that you eventually meet, there is no reason to wait until the last day of the window to do that. They could have done that in August if they really wanted to, or they could have done it a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And yes, there is the hour context in there as well, but ultimately Arsenal didn't sell any or sold very few of the players that they needed and wanted to move on. And as we speak, Mikel Arteta is sitting there with a pen and a bit of A4 paper thinking, which 2 highly paid players, internationals probably, am I going to leave out of my Premier League squad who are literally we are going to pay to turn up to training? And so the context here is, and we pretty much know that Arsenal are on for, a 9-figure loss in their next accounts. They don't really have the money for this signing, and they didn't think they had it until the very last minute. And that suggests maybe it's too much to call it panic, but some last-minute urgency crept in. And again, you can view that as a good thing because Arsenal are kind of damned if they do and damned if they don't. Because if they don't make this signing, this squad is not good enough to get where it needs to get. You do have to spend money to make money, as it were, in this case qualifying for the Champions League. But at the same time, they did pull the lever late in the day, and that could be that could be construed a little bit as panic. We're told that Mikel Arteta made like a bit of an intervention there, and of course we have to balance the possibly short-term aims of our manager against the long-term health of our club. And look, this all sounds very kind of negative, and I don't mean it to sound that way. I just want to bring some balance to this. But in short, this has to work because there is no resale value in this player because we're paying him a lot of money as well. If it doesn't work, no one's taking him. If Willian doesn't work, no one's taking him. If Aubameyang is not still at an elite level at the age of 33, no one is taking him. This is where we've invested our money. Now,
Luiz could go in there, although that's just another year.
That's another year. And that brings me on to my next point. You could look at this and say, well, actually, okay, that front loads us finance-wise for now, but we're losing some big earners next summer, and we're losing one big earner in particular. So maybe they're taking the view, well, let's just swallow it for a year, and then hopefully crowds will be back anyway, and things will look a bit rosier. But really, I think with this signing, Arsenal are under big, big pressure to get into the Champions League next season. They were under pressure anyway, because this is 4 years out now. But this is, Josh Kroenke's quote about having a Champions League wage bill on a Europa League budget. Guess what? It still is, and it's probably bigger than it was last year. And at some point, that has to pay off, and it has to pay off this year. This signing has to work. It can't even be a Pepe. It can't even be, in a year's time, oh, well, maybe if we do this with the system, if we do this with the player, this has to pop. It's as simple as that. And, rightly or wrongly, wherever you sit on this, the club have they've hit the gamble button here.
Yeah. And I mean, so a couple things just that I want to tease out of that really quickly. And Clive, I know you have another view, so I want to get to that. And then I want to get to like what he's going to do for us in our formation, where we're going to use him, because I am excited to get him integrated. I mean, whatever we think of this, and I think our podcast takes a more analytical approach to things at times, sometimes at the expense of just the joy of football. I acknowledge that, and I don't want that to be the case. But so you talked about resale value and age, Tim, and there's definitely been some backlash online of people saying 27 isn't old. Where has this idea come from? So I want to say two things about that. One, 27 is not old. 27 is the middle of a player's prime. When I quote prime age, I am literally just parroting what I have read from like the analytics and sports science community people that I follow on the internet, people who run sports science and analytics companies. I fully acknowledge those people may be wrong. Like, people are wrong all the time. I have absolutely no way of knowing what prime age is other than what people tell me. And if I'm taking the opinions of the wrong people, then I am wrong, and I apologize for that. It has been suggested by people that are in this business and run businesses in this business that prime age is like 23 to 27, 24 to 28. And there are people listening right now probably going, that is absurd. And I fully acknowledge that, the problem is there's error bars there, right? It's not a hard line. Some people's prime extends to 33. Some people like Paul Pogba look like they are running out of steam at 26, 27. And it varies. So I fully acknowledge that. The reason we bring up the age is simply that when you buy someone 24 and put them on a 4-year deal, at the end of that deal, if you can't re-sign them or don't want them, you sell them on. When you buy someone 27, when you buy a Cedric, when you buy a Partey, when you re-sign Oba, when you buy a Willian, you are doing so understanding that the full value of what you've paid for them will depreciate to zero at the end of the deal, right? So that's fine, but that player has to provide something that is a little different than a player who you might say, we spent $50 million, and at the end of the deal, we'll probably get $40 million. So again, that's in the weeds a little. Tim, finish that thought, and then we'll hopefully cycle around to all the fun and excitement and football and all that nonsense. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And look, if Partey doesn't work, and we want to get rid of him, he's not going to be 27 in 2 years. That's the point as well. Like, yeah, he's 27 now, and that's not old, but presuming like it takes a couple of years and in the worst case scenario and we go, actually this player isn't what we want, then he's 29, 30, and that's when you're looking at selling. So again, 27, not old, but
if he ages like Aubameyang, it's no big deal. If he ages like Jack Wilshere, it's a little different. And I admit that's a bad analogy because of the injury situation, but
Yeah, and if you're selling a 30-year-old who's just had a bad 2 years, that's even worse. You sell Torreira at 24, who's had an indifferent 2 years, albeit I understand we didn't actually sell him, but that's, I think in a normal market we would have. That's different to when it's a 30-year-old.
Yeah. So Clive, I know you want to answer back on this, so let's do this, but then let's try to turn this ship that is focusing on the business end to the football end.
I don't really want to answer back because it's very subject to discussion. It really is. It's just football and how you play. I just brought up Liverpool squad age, right? Jordan Henderson 30, Wijnaldum 29, Firmino 29, Matip 29, Van Dijk 29, Thiago 29, Mane 28, nearly 29. Salah 28.
All right, I got to stop you. I have to stop you for a second, though. Just for a second, Clive.
I feel sometimes we get up our own. Now listen, I feel sometimes we get up our own backside about things like this. Just see how the player plays. If the player plays well, then it doesn't really matter. Van Dijk's 29. If he went up for sale now in a non-COVID market, everyone's taking him. They take him because he's playing well. On the footballistically side of things, just see how he plays. I think we just get a bit too wrapped up in these things. A lot of the aged players we have taken on board, we haven't paid for, we haven't paid a high fee for. I'm more worried about the wages, actually, rather than the fees, because the wages are showing us that we can't move people because we pay too much. And that's where the thing that really does concern me, that we still seem to be overpaying on wages. On this player, if you want to get a world-class player, you have to pay. And when was the last time we bought a world-class player at this age? You have to pay. We bought Aubameyang, similar number. You have to pay. If you want to get better, you have to pay.
Well, and to be fair, Clive, Aubameyang proved worth it because of what he did. If Partey performs at Aubameyang's level, this deal is a no-brainer home run. I think we all agree, Clive. As long as he's elite, this is a sensational deal. I would never disagree with that, by the way.
I don't think it's a sensational deal.
If he's elite, it is.
We want to get better, don't we? We all know our midfield's not where it is, so you want to get better, and And so to get better, you have to go for the best players that you feel in that area. And this is probably one of the more proven players we've actually spent money on. So I think it's something we should be hoping it works. I really feel we need to be a bit more positive about it. That's just my feeling.
Well, look, to be clear, I'm extremely positive about it from a footballing standpoint. It makes us better. It makes us more fun. It makes us more, I believe it'll make us more successful. The only pushback I wanted to have, Clive, briefly about the Liverpool ages that you quoted is, you quoted their ages now, but bought at 24, bought at 26, bought at 25, bought at 26, bought at 24, won the Champions League, won the Premier League.
Yeah,
right?
But you talk about prime ages. I don't look at those players as past their prime.
No, but they are probably towards the end of the cycle of this team now. They are,
and they're building a team beneath them. So
right, exactly.
They could easily be the best forward in the league. And he's nearly 28 and a half years of age. I just think we just need to relax on these things. It all depends on who you are, how you look after yourself, your body type.
And the clubs will know that better than we will, Clive. They have the medical data. They have the look. I am not disagreeing with you at all. I think it is such a basic point, really, to distill it down to simply say that when you spend $50 million on a 23-year-old versus spending $50 million on a 27-year-old, there's different risk profiles associated with it, and they vary by player. Let's move on from it. I think over the years, what will be borne out. A
good example is, say, someone like Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. He's only 27, right, in his prime. But look at his injury record. That means he's probably older in his body than 27.
Undeniably.
Right? So,
Jack Wilshere's a great example. He's done.
I think there's something that, there's more to it than just saying this is his player and that's it. There's a lot more to it, how a player moves, how they keep their injuries, etc., what their weight is, what the mechanics is. Someone like Aubameyang, I never worried for a second about him. Just looking at him mechanically and physically, you think, you know what, he may be 31, but really he's 28. It's just on his body and his injury record. And so it varies on a case by case. And I just think we just need to, I just look around, I just see people say, oh, he's too old. I think we're scarred. We're scarred. We are scarred by recent occurrences of player that you spoke about in your introduction. These scars really bother us because they divide us, right? When we spend money and it doesn't work out. And you look at some of our more expensive signings, they haven't really worked out versus some of our less expensive signings. And I think a lot of us as a fan base, we carry those scars. And that's where the negativity comes in, because we're about to be paying £350,000 a week to somebody who may not even be in our Premiership squad.
Yeah.
Right? So that's where the scars come in.
Look, there is no scenario where Thomas Partey is too old. There's no scenario where that's the case. None. He is absolutely in the heart of his prime. The only question is whether the fee and the wages to get him right now were too much, but that doesn't change that he comes in the heart of his prime and will have an impact right away. And Aubameyang's the best example. We paid top dollar, maybe not top dollar, he could have been £100 million at one point, but we paid pretty damn near top dollar to get an elite player, and he has performed like an elite player, and that move has been unimpeachably sensational. And if Thomas Partey adds in the midfield the kind of elite quality that Aubameyang added in the forward line, we will be a very, very good team for several seasons. And that is certainly the hope. And I think Tim expressed it well, where it's just the point that it has to be that. And I sure hope it will be. So, Clive, yeah, please. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I just wanted to add, just to steer it into like probably a more positive direction as well. Like with Aubameyang as well, we had no plan for Aubameyang whatsoever. He's still not playing in his favoured position.
We had just bought a striker the summer before.
Yeah, exactly. And it still really works. On this occasion, we've actually got a coach who has really vouched for this player, who presumably has a real plan to use him. So, like, I don't think we're going to be flitting Thomas Partey around like on the left wing or on the right wing like we have with Aubameyang, and even with Pepe. Like, we bought this really good player who we have we don't know how to use. I don't think that's the case on this occasion. This is a manager who knows what he wants from his team, knows what he wants from this player.
Yeah, and Gunnersaurus wailing in the background was very topical, I thought.
Look, I'd just like to wade in here to try and steer things in a positive direction after Tim got involved there. The one thing I would like to add is I'm quite heartened that Atletico Madrid did not want to sell this player for the release clause, and they need money, right? And they know all about him. They know what he can do. They know his physical state. So while I'm basically with you, Elliot, I do console myself that this was the last thing Atletico Madrid wanted. So that makes me think we might kind of sort of have fallen into value here, especially if he can provide a platform for everybody else.
I have to ask something because I think I'm taking crazy pills. And I noticed this yesterday. Since when has a little bit of circumspection become equated with negativity? Like, I don't get it. I think Thomas Partey is a good player. I think he makes us better. I cannot be any more unequivocal in my conclusion that Thomas Partey is an improvement on what we have in an area of the pitch we desperately need an improvement. Circumspection based on the deal and some questions based on squad building that do not diminish my belief in the quality of the player is not negativity. And I do think we have a podcast where we have debates and conversations. I think they're so interesting. I say all the time, what do I say? The chats we have on Twitter and in Discord and on the podcast, I love them. And I love them because we try to get into the details. We get granular, and I love that. But like, I noticed this on Twitter yesterday, and I get it. Look, sometimes it's about reading the room. We just made a massive signing on deadline day at a left field, rescued the window, brought in a player people are excited about. Read the room. Just be happy. And I am. So, Clive, from a footballing standpoint, midfield has been a real problem. And I think, as you know, I rate Danny Ceballos very, very highly. And in that period against Sheffield United, when we're in the back four in the midfield two, and I'm looking on that pitch, and Williams playing between the lines, and I'm saying, he can ape that Aouar role. He's not Aouar, but he can do it. And, Saka can drift in and do it, and Pepe can drift in and do it. But boy, would we be better if it wasn't El Neni partnering Ceballos. And sure enough, now it is not going to be. So that Ceballos Partey double pivot, is that, in your view now, especially now that we've seen Willian take up that sort of midfield 3 role, 4-2-3-1 role, does this unlock a path to more back 4, or do you think we can still be fluid because a Partey, Ceballos double pivot in a back 3 works just as well? I mean, how much flexibility does this give this? And do you think it is a natural conclusion that it'll be Ceballos and Partey that we move to basically right away?
I think that balance looks quite nice, left and right. It looks quite good. We got more of a small space player and a bigger space player. We got range of pass. We got carrying, press resistant players. So it looks quite nice. I on paper it looks, but don't discount Xhaka and El Neni. I think they perform similar type roles, not quite as good, not quite as manipulative when it comes to moving the ball. They're a little bit more limited. But they have the base skills that Arteta seems to want, and whatever he's done, during his flexibility and moving things around and having hybrid players, I think almost every game he's apart from maybe one, he's played a double pivot. So he likes to have those players around there as almost release valves to receive the ball, and what they do with it from there on in is down to their individual quality. And I felt, particularly in Liverpool game, the first Liverpool game, I think we really left goals on the pitch. And I felt we left them because we didn't have the ability to play the passes that were on. And I felt that at the time when I said to you, for one of the first times I started to look at Xhaka and I started to key on him. And the next game he wasn't playing, right? So he was substituted there and then he wasn't playing. And I really felt there was opportunities. And when I was watching Aston Villa at the weekend playing at Liverpool, they played those passes. John McGinn played those passes, and they were in and through. We didn't have the ability to do it. So we always go and pick the first 11s like we do, and I think those two look like 2-1 favourites to start the bigger games and the more difficult games from a talent perspective, but things change very quickly in football. But yeah, I'm glad that we got players that can play the passes to our forwards in different ways, off both feet, just do more things with the ball. And I think we've really missed that. I felt for many years we've turned away from opportunities. We've been a top-loaded team with strikers that are expensive and on high wages and good strikers. And I think we've turned away from them on many occasions to go square and go around. And I'm hoping that these guys can get there. And I know we get criticised for shots. I think only 6 or 7 shots in the game that we haven't spoken about yet. But I think some of that comes from the limitations of our deeper midfielders, and I'm hoping that changes going forward, along with particularly the ability for both of those players to go from left to right. I think that's going to be something that we need to see more of, because I've got hopes on Pepe really developing. I think in this game, Sheffield United, I think we saw a right side really kick off, and that was interesting how we did that. So yeah, I'm hopeful. It's just a quality lift.
I mean, this is a player you really wanted. I mean, so you've got to be pretty excited about what he brings.
I want to see. I think it's a very good player, right? So, but I really want to see the quality lift, and I don't think we fans realise what we haven't had. And I'm just hoping beyond hope that he is exactly what I think he is. But I think as soon as we see it, it's going to become really apparent what we haven't had for many years. We've had ball-playing midfielders, we've had controlling midfielders, but we haven't had somebody that wants to own the area, go and engage, run through people, run around people. I'm not talking about a wrecking ball here. I'm talking about a proper midfielder that understands what he needs to do to win the duels in his space and then use the ball very quickly and very effectively. And I think he's as good an example of that player that I've seen, really. And the first time I saw him, I felt the same immediately. I thought, we need this guy. I look around, I've looked around at other YouTubes like I do, with similar type players, and I just haven't seen one as good as him. I thought we wouldn't get him. Could I too agree? I do think he's a bit expensive, but I'm saying that because I carry the same scars. I want to stop myself from doing that. I want to start thinking about what he brings football-wise, because I think that's the most important thing. I know you're saying introspecting is good. Yes, it is good. But sometimes we need to look at the football pitch and just see what someone can do or he can't do, and what he needs to do and what he does to enable other players to be better and things like that. And that's what my brain is primarily, I suppose. I've got a bit of frustration that
it's totally fair.
Not everyone's in the same place as me.
It's yeah, and you know what I want? What I don't want, Clive, is I don't want us to just keep celebrating everything and then scratching our head when it doesn't work and say, well, we never could have seen that coming. And so there have been times, certain moves like, Cedric would be an example where I just had to stop and say, okay, I don't get this. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't look right to me. Not because I know better, just because I don't want us to be in a situation where all we ever do is praise moves, right? And then a year later wonder why they didn't work out. If you look at...
I think I'll say one more thing. I don't want to make out that we're cheerleading, right? Because when you look at Gabriel, we all like him.
He looks fantastic.
Then now we're looking at Pablo Maria and wondering. Right? This, just like we did with Lacazette, then we buy Aubameyang. We're wondering. So the club is not perfect, everything it does, because both of those moves could be questioned. We got two centre forwards and we got two left-footed centre backs. And now we're playing one of the centre forwards out on the left wing. Okay, he's got a golden boot in his back pocket, but it's not optimal, but many people think that way. So I'm not saying the club's perfect, but one day on, I think there's a lot football-wise to enjoy about this one, and I hope I'm right. I hope he does well, because it is important to where we need to go. It's important for the manager, right? And that's the most important thing, because I think he's talented, and I hope he gets this one right, because you judge him on his first employees he brings into the office, and this is somebody he obviously wanted, so I hope it works out for him.
Yeah, being excited about a move is not being a cheerleader, and being circumspect about a move is not being doomy or negative. You can look at the club and say, 2 strikers in back-to-back windows, didn't get a fee for Lexus, didn't get a fee for Ramsey, re-signed Ozil, 3 right backs, 4 left. What do we have? 9 center backs on our books right now, and you could say there's reason to question some of the things the club do, and it would be silly not to. You could turn around and look the other way and see the things we've done brilliantly, see the moves we made. The Tierney move is brilliant, to bringing Saka along, what's happening with the academy, getting Aubameyang when we didn't look favored, getting Partey done. Bringing Ceballos back on loan, which is a great cost-effective move to help an area of the pitch where we're struggling. Gabriel looks incredibly savvy of a move. When you look at what other clubs have spent on that, what looks to be that caliber of center back. So you can look at all of the dimensions, and there are many dimensions on which this operates on. I'd just rather look at all of them than just look at one of them. Paul, I think one of the really interesting things with Partey is not just what he unlocks for us structurally. I mean, look, there's just no way around it. Granit Xhaka has good ball progression, but he doesn't have that mobility. Partey has the ball progression, but he's not someone you can just press and take it off him. He lost the ball hardly ever for Atletico, regardless of the fact that he was among the highest touch players in their entire squad. So always on the ball, never losing it. And that makes it difficult because if you look at what Liverpool did to us, if you look at these games, they target Xhaka or they target they target Xhaka and they leave El Neni. But you can't target Partey and leave Ceballos, and you can't target Ceballos and leave Partey. And so it should give us more room to operate in midfield. And one of the things I'm really curious to see is what the Arteta impact is for Partey versus what the Simeone impact was. Was Simeone emphasizing, careful passes? Was he emphasizing safe passes? Was he emphasizing ball security? Was he emphasizing defensive solidity? What is it about Simeone's tactic? Because he is an incredibly unique manager in terms of the type of football he wants him to play. If you look at Partey for Ghana, he's got 9 goals in his last 2,000 or so minutes. He's got 3 for Atletico in that same period. So I know this is pure speculation, Paul, but if you had to speculate, do you think that there are dimensions of Partey's game that we may see more of that have been restrained by the type of football that he's been playing for Atletico Madrid?
Yeah, I think so. I think for the reasons you just laid out there, he's going to have license. We're going to have more possession. We're going to be further up the field. Hopefully, we're going to move more to a progressive style of football than we've been able to for a little while. And I think I'm guessing we'll see is, Simeone has a very structured style of play, whereas I think what we'll say is Danny and Partey, you mostly kind of work out your balance between you. And they're going to be a very interesting mix for the reasons you laid out there. They're both press resistant. Partey, especially for big guys, quick feet, quick mover, quick distribution. So he's going to provide lots of problems. And I don't think you can legislate how those two players play. They're going to find a particular balance on the pitch that will ebb and flow with the nature of the game. And Partey is going to find himself in plenty of situations that he wasn't historically finding himself at Atletico Madrid. So he's going to have a chance to get forward. He's going to have a chance to get into the box more so than he did before. And he's a pretty I think he's a pretty complete player, but it makes him sound like he's polished and refined. And I think he can do a bit of everything. He has his strengths. He's not polished, but he's incredibly impactful. And he's going to have a personality that changes how other teams approach us. He's going to create space for us in midfield just because you don't screw with Partey. In a way that, Granit's a pretty big guy, but he doesn't really know how to use it. He's not mobile enough that he actually ever really used his physique beyond kind of shielding the ball. Partey is going to clear spaces for other players, and people are going to back off him because they don't want to be embarrassed. Really good dribbler. He'll go, Xhaka is a high percentage dribbler, but he's not a high volume dribbler. He'll trick his way past a player and lay it off. But Partey will embarrass you and go up the field. Him and Danny are both really good dribblers. I think they're going to clear out a space in the middle of the pitch that makes other midfields back off and will allow him to get forward and do interesting things. And he won't be the guy who sits all the time. We've seen Danny likes to drop deep and pick up the ball. I think they'll be kind of little and large, doing in some ways very similar things in slightly different ways. But people compare Partey and Xhaka. I think they should probably compare Partey and Danny. I think they're very similar. Totally different physical attributes, but they'll do a lot of similar things in how we play, and it's going to be fun to watch them find their own balance.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I know we're about to lose you, Clive. So do you want to just have a sort of final word of how you'd like to see him set up initially, and just a last word before we let you go? Or not? Totally your point.
Sorry, I was on mute.
So
No, I think I've said enough. I do think actually. I know we have to speak about Partey, but I do think what he can do on that right hand side. We spent 120 million nearly on two players that could have played on that, one centre mid and one right wing. And I do think the move is linked. I do think that right-hand side has been underpowered. I do expect it to be more powered now going forward. And I think this game against Sheffield United was a real indicator of that and how we use that side. And we use both sides. And in all the recent games, over many months, I haven't seen that sort of duality and how we attack down both sides. So that's interesting. That's an interesting development. I think he's going to aid that. And again, more importantly, football, we look back in the days when we were a dominant team and we just took it for granted. And we've lacked dominance for many years. And dominance has an effect on other players. It has an effect on your own players, how they feel psychologically and emotionally on the pitch. And when they have people around them like Gabriel, like Aubameyang, like Partey, I think it's going to make other people feel bigger, stronger, less risk averse. I think we're going to see more potential for some of our younger players. So yeah, I do think it's a step forward. And I do take Tim's point, this has to work, but Pepe has to work. Aubameyang mustn't get crocked like he did in this Sheffield United game. There's a lot of financial investment in this team that's very, we feel like it's very important because the world is going for a very interesting time. But it is quite interesting. I read an article that Miguel Delaney wrote today. I can't remember the exact numbers, but the Premier League clubs managed to spend more money in this window than the previous summer window. And so people are recognising there's an opportunity out there right now that you have to accept, you have to take, and there'll be other opportunities where we need to loan people to build value. And that's what we try to do in this window. And I think the real balancing act will be next summer when we lose over £600,000 of wages off of our wage bill. We're going to see people walk away because we're going to take advantage of what the previous regime gave them. So we still got a way to go before we financially reset and get ready for a rebuild. A real rebuild is next summer. That's when those dead bodies that are hiding in the squad right now and trying to not answer their agent's phone, they're going to have to go. And when they go, then we can really do something with the new numbers or pay the debt that we've racked up from the stage payments, etc. So a little while to go, but this is an encouraging first step on being a pretty balanced football team. So I look forward to it.
Both Partey and Ceballos have good ball winning statistics. Not necessarily high volume tackles, but interceptions and recoveries. I think if you have two players that can go forward and drop back and recover the ball, then they each have a little bit of freedom to go do what they want to do and they can trust their partner more. But I think to your point, Clive, we don't need to play with training wheels on. We don't need to play with guardrails on. I don't think you need Tierney as a left-sided center back to hide Xhaka's liabilities a little bit. I don't think you need that extra player who can fill the space that's vacated. They can cover ground a little more. They can recover the ball a little more. And then I think that frees you up to play more expansive football. And, I think both Ceballos and Partey can break lines. Xhaka can do it as well, but he really likes to play it out to the wings. Partey does that also. And, he doesn't have very high XG chain, which means his passes aren't always contributing to goal scoring actions as much, but I think there could be a Simeone impact there too. I think these guys are really going to be a great pairing. I hope that is the pairing because I think there's a lot of complementary qualities to them that's going to make it difficult for defenses to decide how they want to key on us. So I look forward to that, and I think that the press resistance it gives us is great. You know what else it gives us, though, by the way? I think one of the reasons this move makes a lot of sense to me is I think it makes us so much better playing out from the back. Because when we played out from the back, some of the brilliant goals we've had recently playing out from the back, a lot of it starts with Ceballos getting the ball top of the box under pressure, but being able to turn and face and progress it. And now you have two players who can do that and break the lines from the center of the pitch deep in their own defensive third. I think that gives us a lot of flexibility playing out from the back. It makes us a very interesting team. And I'm really excited to see that part of it. Clive, I guess you got to run, right?
I do. Got a game tonight.
Yep. Good luck to you. Coach, have a good one. I'll chat with you tomorrow for the scouting video on Partey, which I think will be illuminating. So Clive's on Twitter at ClivePFC. Thanks, man.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so Tim, I think I want to tease out just a few more details of this and then maybe just summarize the window a little bit before we just get to some final odds and ends. But, do you want to just quickly sort of talk about the kind of football you think this lets us play? I mean, I think El Neni, we know his limitations, not very progressive. He's a TikTok player, right? He's metronomic, but not a lot of ambition, not a lot of elusiveness. Granit Xhaka, a little more progressive, but in the specific zones, definitely no elusiveness, very suspect under pressure. Partey, I think, gives you that flexibility I was talking about. Do you see it the way I do in terms of not only enabling our play out from the back to be more variable and dynamic, but also giving more freedom to play expansive football, not having to have the guardrails of someone to protect, the space that Xhaka, for example, might be leaving behind him?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I was really interested in that I guess I didn't really know until yesterday was how many different systems Partey played in for Atletico Madrid. So, because I think when you sign an Atleti player, there's always that anxiety of, well, actually Simeone plays in a very specialised way. But actually has used a few different formations in recent years. And to be fair, if you're going to take anyone so taking Griezmann from Atleti, that's difficult because he did play a very specialized role for them that's maybe difficult to translate. If you're going to take anything off Atleti, take one of their central midfielders, because that's that's stuff you can translate, I think, into. There are qualities there that you can translate into other systems. Because even if you take their centre backs, right, you kind of look at it and go, yeah, but they usually play like a deep block, and can they play that kind of that high line or whatever, assuming that's what you want to do. But if you want to take one guy whose attributes really seem to translate, then I think this is the guy, really. And the fact that he was able to do it in a number of different Simeone formations, I think does give us that. I think it really does give us that variety. And I was thinking earlier, when I was reading about that, I was thinking, well, actually looking at, Arteta talked about being able to play different systems. And I think we've got the 3-4-3 pretty much nailed now. I think we probably suspect, and I reckon Arteta suspects this as well, that's one to keep in the cupboard for the big games. Go to City and play that. Go to Liverpool and play that, blah, blah, etc. But we need to find a different way against other opponents. But I was even thinking like Partey played in a 4-4-2, for Atleti, and that's an option that's on the table for Arsenal. I guess you could ask the question as to whether, if you're going to play 4-4-2 in this day and age, you really need both your strikers to be brilliant pressers. And I'm not sure Aubameyang is that. I don't think he's bad at it, but that maybe needs some tweaking. But I think from what I've heard and what I've read about Partey, he can play in a 2 or a 3. Can play in that double pivot. He can sit. He can go forward. He can drive forward. That for me is the most interesting thing here, regardless of what system we're playing, how versatile it makes us, whether it stops that kind of the thing you were describing about ganging up on players. The most valuable attribute I can think of with everything I've read about Thomas Partey is his ability to drive the ball forward. And the stat I read yesterday, in La Liga last season, 57 out of 64 take-ons completed, 89% success rate. Mm-hmm. The Arsenal midfielder that came closest to that was Ceballos with 27. So he's more than doubling, and that's our best central midfielder in that respect. And these are the players that we've missed for ages, that we haven't really replaced. The Wilsheres, Cazolas, Iwobis, Sanchez's, Chamberlains, the dribblers. We haven't replaced those players for a long, long time. And that's what I'm most excited about here. And that's why, for me, you can say that him and Auer have different profiles, and one's more of like an advanced 8, an attacking 10. I'm not really that exercised about where Partey starts. That sounds weird, doesn't it?
Where does the party start? In midfield.
So whether he's like deep in the double pivot, or whether he's number 8 or 6 or whatever, if he's getting that ball and he's driving it forward, I don't give a shit if it starts on the edge of, of our 6-yard box. That's what I want. Like, as long as because.
So Tim,
there's
those are per season numbers, right? So if Danny had a full season, they might be quite close in terms of take-ons, which comes back to the fascinating idea that they're actually, in many respects, the most similar players we can pair up in midfield.
Yeah, definitely.
Could be really interesting to see how they find this balance, because they do a lot of the same things.
Yeah. But it seems like maybe in a slightly different way. It really does seem like Partey's more of that. I am absolutely going to take you on, and that's probably going to be my first thought when I get the ball. It's not a case of, oh well, I can take you on if I have to. It's more, no, that's what I want to do. And because that's just as effective a way of, as long as you're getting the ball into advanced positions, it doesn't matter whether you're spanking them from 70 yards like David Luiz, or you're gently stroking them from the centre circle, or you're just dribbling through or powering through or tricking your way through. As long as the ball bloody gets there, that's the problem for Arsenal at the moment. And that's what enthuses me most about. So whatever system he plays in, whether how deep he starts or whatever, that's really what I want to see him doing. And yes, to your point, I think he could do that in any number of systems or formations by the sounds of it.
You know what's interesting too? I think he plays 92 or 93% of his passes with his right foot. And if we're shifting from Xhaka to Partey, and if Partey's going to play on the left, now he might play on the right and Danny on the left, but they're both fairly right-footed. I mean, Danny's a little more two-footed, but do you think that maybe will help us balance out that left side bias and access the right a little more? Because obviously Shaq is going to want to spin it up the left side, Paul, whereas now, Partey might be more inclined to look at Pepe coming into the channel, or, over the top to Pepe running in behind, whereas that ball, for Xhaka to get it to Pepe running in behind is very difficult. He's got to touch it, shift it, get it on the left, swing a sort of out swinger, if you follow me, to Pepe, whereas the through ball to Pepe, or Willian, I suppose, but let's hope Pepe. The through ball from Partey across the pitch in behind, I mean, that's on for him. That's more going to fit him whether he's on the left or right.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, I think we think of Danny as a right-sided player, but I kind of like him on the left, and it allows him to get up to that left pocket just outside of the box where he's made most of his triangles in his career, just outside of the box on the left-hand side. So I think that could suit them well. And maybe there was recognition from Arteta in our last game, starting El Neni to mirror image what Xhaka does and did, dropping into the left back position, that we need some flexibility, some surprise. I mean, he talked about studying Wilder and studying Sheffield United for a couple of years, and he comes out with this different system to give them a different look they weren't expecting. So I think he recognizes you can't be that predictable where we're always playing up the left, that we have options we're not using. We've seen games, I remember the Crystal Palace game last year, where we had Pepe and Ozil off to the right, who never saw the ball because Xhaka and co were in the diametrically opposed corner trying to get the ball upfield, and everybody was saying, Ozil didn't do much and Pepe didn't do much that game. Crystal Palace were very organised, but they were also isolated by the fact that distribution was on the very far diametrically opposed corner of the pitch, and they were never seeing the ball. So you need those options, and we may see this weird-looking symmetry with Danny and Partey being able to do basically very similar things from midfield and mix it up. And, they can quite easily and comfortably swap sides, as you see with wingers occasionally doing. Those two could do it all day long. And now you're mixing up the opponent's midfield, but you're doing similar kinds of things with different players with different physical attributes, giving different problems to the opposition in terms of how they match them up in the midfield. I think because of that, I think it's by far the most interesting combination of players in our midfield. And yeah, it's going to balance up our side that we don't have to do weird and wonky things to cover Xhaka's weaknesses, so we can leverage his strengths. Basically.
Let me ask you a question though, and I think this is the hard part, because I do want to be positive about this move. Mm-hmm. Should we at least have considered before making this move? And again, it's just because you got to look at the totality of the situation. Mm-hmm. Should we have considered how insufferable the puns are going to be?
Yes.
Tim, can we really, can we get the fans together? Can we get journalists together? Can we have some agreement that you get to use the puns for like a week or two and then they have to stop? What should the grace period be on the puns, and how many is too many?
I think myself, and I've very much more than contributed to this. I think a bit like Paul with the Y Scout account, we've maxed it out. Look, I'm not entirely au fait with like Ghanaian naming customs, but he's got Thomas on the back of his shirt, and maybe that's because he is sick of them as well. A bit like. When Johan Cruyff's son, Jordi Cruyff, used to play, he used to have Jordi on the back of his shirt and not Cruyff because he was sick of the comparison. And maybe that's why Thomas Partey has Thomas on the back of his shirt.
Which one's going to get oldest first? Arteta's having a party. It's party time. Arsenal party at the Emirates. Party on. What's going to be the one that's the tipping point?
It's my party, and I'll cry if I want to.
Yeah, I could see that one being one that if it goes wrong, certainly could come up.
You've got to fight for your right to party. It's endless.
Yeah,
I've got to give myself some credit, right? Like, people think I think I'm this jokester or whatever. All right, a lot of people think I'm just not funny. But I don't think I've yet made a party pun in my whole feckin' Partey existence pursuit. I think right from the get-go I thought, that's not bloody funny.
No. Is it possible, like, what if he's just really industrious and like works really hard? He's just a really hard worker on the pitch. Could it go so far and get bad enough where it's like Arsenal's Labour Party or something like that? Could you wind up with something that bad? I don't know. I think it could go to a really bad, dark place, and we need to be careful. Look, insert party pun here and let it go from there. Let's all, after we post this on Twitter, if you're on Twitter, just reply to this tweet with one party pun. We'll have the whole freaking list, and then we just stop. I think that has to be agreed on. Let's start to...
Would this help any, Elliot? Mm-hmm. His name is not Partey. It's Partey, according to a Ghanaian yesterday. And that doesn't really make for great puns. Makes for one or two, maybe, but they die out real quick. We just, like all that work you put into pronouncing awach, we just need to pronounce it as Partey.
Except then you're going to have all the goose liver jokes.
Yeah.
And but how many goose liver puns are there?
There's two of them.
Yeah. Okay, well... So, look, we've got him in. I'm really excited. I do think it gives us... It's great for two reasons, because when we have to play the back three in the big games, which I think works for us, we still have more elusiveness, more escapability, more counterattacking capability when we're under pressure. When we want to play the back four, which hopefully we'll do in the smaller games, I think it's harder for teams to target us. I think it's harder for them to force us just back to the center backs, horseshoe passing, things like that. I think we've covered the fact that the deal itself is something that has questions around it that we will start to be able to discuss more over time based on his performance. I think we've covered the issue of why there's a conversation about age and why there isn't. Look, for whatever the reason, people tend to retreat into their corners sometimes, and I get that. I think it is possible to be excited, very excited to watch the football that we're going to play with him at the club and still try to poke at some of the questions we poked at this episode, and hopefully that doesn't piss people off too much, but I know it will, so I'm sorry. Hopefully you enjoyed the live stream yesterday and you forgive us because we put in 4 hours of live content for you. But yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Can I just add to that, because I don't feel responsible. I am responsible for taking the conversation that way. I guess I wanted to table those things a little bit, but like, rest assured, I'm not sitting there like sitting in a dark room at night going, God, we just signed a 27-year-old. I have a very strict policy of not getting depressed about things that haven't happened yet. And it's the same with fucking starting lineups when I see them before games. I have a policy of not getting upset about things that haven't happened yet. So
Elliot.
I wanted to table it because I think it's interesting, and I stand by what I said. But at the same time, like I'm not kind of sitting there kind of, biting my thumb, as it were.
It's tough. It's tough because like I look at the Emery pods, right? Like we did Emery pod 1 and we gave our unvarnished, honest opinion of it. And people got very mad at us.
And we were right.
And we came back and we gave a varnished opinion of it that made people happier. But like at the end of the day, the truth is like there is a balance. You shouldn't just for the sake of being right, like try to be a miserable bastard all the time, because you're going to be right sometime and wrong sometimes. Like I think it is fair to want to balance enjoying good things and being happy while also having an analytical element to what you are doing where you engage your brain and say, here are some of the ways that I have question marks. And I don't think we need to caveat it beyond that. Let's finish up just with some summaries of the window. Paul, I want to do American letter grades because the Arscast did numbers out of 10 and I only want to copy them so much, not more than necessary. And thanks to Andrew, by the way, for coming on the live stream yesterday. Really appreciate that. If you missed it and want to watch it, by the way, 4 hours of content to fill your day. It's on YouTube and you can watch it there. Paul, what would you grade the window as an American letter grade, and maybe just give your reasoning behind
that? So there's incomings and outgoings, right?
That is presumably how the transfer window works. Yes, unless there is another criteria, upcomings and downgoings. I don't know.
Listen, you smart arts. So are we given? It's a different grade for both. I mean, the outgoings is shite.
Okay, so give me your outgoing letter grade and your incoming letter grade. I didn't want to do that because the Arscast did that, but I guess we're just going to go fully copy them. So here we go. Copyright Arscast 2020. Go for it.
I think the outgoings is an F. Now, an asterisk because it's just an absolutely ugly window. So it's far from all on the club. It's screwed up, but we've done terribly. We sold Emi Martinez, and that's largely down to Emi Martinez. We chose not to sell Maitland-Niles, which I'm personally delighted about, but it's probably a terrible decision. From a financial standpoint, we may be delighted we have him in a few years' time. We've managed to basically sell nobody. Guendouzi, a mess. One of the advantages of working with super agents is they can get shit done in markets when nobody else can get anything done because like weird shit happens, like with Jorge Mendes. There's a plus, there's a minus to it. Overall, I'm glad we seem to have stepped away from that world in large part. But a window like this is a window in which they can not that they ever did a lot for us in terms of outgoings, but that's kind of why you get involved with not necessarily super agents, but good agents who can grease the skids. Those wartime guys who can get you your contraband. That shady looking guy in the cool suit who can get you stockings and cigarettes and chocolate and shit. So there's a reason to be good at working with agents. We just weren't very good at working with them. Anyway, tough market. Nobody got much going. Well, not nobody, but most clubs didn't. So an F on the way out. Coming in, again, get asterisk because it's a tough market. But I think probably I'm going to ignore the financial side of it because it gets really complicated. I mean, I don't think it's a super high grade if I have to factor in the financial deal of Partey, but I think it's kind of a B+. I think we got Arteta enough of what he needs to be successful going forward this season in a tough market. So I'd say a B+ on the way in and an F on the way out.
You know what's tough? If you look at our window in the context of money, it's an A+++++, because we're losing hundreds of millions of pounds and we signed a 50 million pound player and put him on big wages. Like clearly we have tapped into money that we don't have on the basis of revenue. If you're going to buy into
I would not have guessed we would have done this based on who we thought Arsenal and the Crankies were a few years ago.
Yeah. I mean, look, we didn't fund this out of out of revenues or profits. If you want to believe in this quote unquote self-sustaining model, that's not where this money came from. If you want to grade the window purely on need, it's like a C, because we got one thing done we had to do, which is a central midfield upgrade. Great. We got defensive reinforcements, although, we'll get to the outgoings. We have 9 defenders, central defenders on our books. But I think we needed that creative midfielder. So I think Aouar and Partey is the A+, and doing one of the two things we clearly needed to do. Now you could say, well, Willian is the budget, short-term Aouar type role for us, and maybe he is, and maybe that'll work out. So maybe that changes it a little bit. I mean,
and Gabriel.
No. Look, I said we addressed. He's a great acquisition. I think center back would look a lot better in the context of outgoings, because we just have too many of them now. but yes, I agree that he looks excellent, and that looks like great business. I mean, Tim, in terms of your letter grade for incomings and outgoings, how do you do this? It's a tough needle to thread, given that there were things we needed to do we didn't do, in my view. But the fact that we did anything in the context of what's happening economically is sort of encouraging to begin with. So which side do you fall on? We didn't do enough, or that we did anything is a miracle?
And well, a little bit in between, and because they're linked, aren't they? Because I think B on the incomings is absolutely fair, because I think whatever you think personally of the signings, Arsenal got nearly everything they wanted done. I think in the dream scenario they get Aouar as well. The reason they didn't get that is because of the outgoings. If they sell even one of Torreira, Guendouzi, or even just get some wages off the books, they might have been able to do both. So it's difficult to divorce them. And also, not to dredge up the discussion we had at the beginning of the podcast, you can view the financial aspect of it in two different ways. You could say that makes it worse, that we've probably overspent, and not for the first time in recent years. And look, I understand that they probably didn't have much choice. If they really want to go back into the top 4, they couldn't not. But at the same time, we might be hamstringing ourselves. I'd give incomings a solid B, not a minus or a plus. Yeah, outgoings F has to be. And I won't repeat what Paul said, because I completely agree. Those caveats exist where it's the club's fault for having so many players they want to offload, but the state of the market is not their fault.
Yeah, I mean, I think we discussed this in previous podcasts. If you wanted to push the boat out and spend a lot of money that you don't have, this would be when to do it. There's no FFP right now because it's an FFP holiday. Other clubs aren't able to spend as much. I mean, Chelsea notwithstanding, but we've seen clubs maybe be a little more careful in the market. The market is depressed, certainly in the other leagues, maybe not as much in the Premier League, but it is down, I think down 15%, and it'd be a lot more if Chelsea hadn't spent like crazy. So you could have distanced yourself a little bit from the crowd if you went out and you did a bunch of deals. But I don't think any of us expect Kroenke to run the club that way. So I find myself torn between thinking we missed an opportunity and thinking I'm just glad we did anything at all, and the thing we did is pretty exciting and is a big move. The outgoings is problematic. So, I mean, on our books now, we have Mavropanos, Saliba, Gabriel, Luiz, Mustafi, Socrates, Chambers, Holding, Marie. It's a lot. We have Cedric and Maitland-Niles both backing up Hector Bellerin. Probably a little bit of overkill there. You might say there's 2 players we're going to have to not even register for our Premier League and Europa League team. The Europa League side of that we should know literally around the time I hit stop on recording this. So you do wonder, had we made a sale, had we taken the Wolves bid for Maitland-Niles, do we do 2 deals instead of 1? It's speculation, and it's easy to say yes we would have, but I'm not convinced. Having said that, the outgoings probably needed to be better. I do wonder if we'll loan someone maybe down the leagues, because the championship loan window I think is still open. Smith Rowe hasn't featured at all for the team yet. I know he's dealing with injuries. I wonder what we'll do with him this season. Reece Nelson, there was a loan to Newcastle, I think. Speculator, was that was Holding, actually. I apologize. But we'll see what happens with him. Very interesting times, and I think I'm reluctant to do this. You know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to address. Well, yeah, I am going to do it. Paul, I want to just quickly touch on this, but not on the Mesut Ozil PR side of it. I don't want to get into that. It is a morass, and there's no way of discussing it that won't make someone feel that it's agenda-driven and hateful and ugly and bad. And I just don't want to, because who's gonna enjoy that? But the decision to let the employee who plays Gunnersaurus go. If I ran a business school, I'd teach a whole course on this. It's such a trash move. And I guess what I would say is like, you hardly save any money. The timing of it is thoroughly indefensible. And it's not a guy that's just going to slip through the cracks. It is an iconic part of the club that people are going to notice going. Now you could say, oh, it's just until the fans are back in the stadium. But like, is there any upside to the club doing this? Whatever money they save, I mean, they could save it 80 different ways. And I guess what I would say, Paul, is what's the upside? How does the club benefit from this, apart from just the most de minimis economic help? I mean, it seems like the worst possible move imaginable.
Look, there's not a lot of things that like make me a bit sad. Well, maybe there are. This is one of them, which is weird. But he's just such a part of the club. I mean, mascots are a symbol. So guess what? He's a symbol. And he's a symbol for the connection of the club with the supporters. Your question, was there any positive aspect to it? I mean, I think it was a bad move PR-wise, a bad move in many ways. The only thing I can say about it is maybe if you're the CEO in a club and you've got hundreds and hundreds of employees and you are having to let them go, and some of these people have a lot of work that actually they're doing for the club, but you're kind of reorganizing it, you're reallocating it, and you know, you've got Gunnersaurus, you've got Jerry, and he can't really be utilized at the time, and you can't risk him, you can't risk, what would you send him off to do? To meet up with kids in a public place? So it's kind of this weird falseness to keep him on while you're letting other people go, and there might have been a sense in which to look at your other employees in the face, you can't. You kind of have this situation where you've got what would the term? You got to be equitable in how people are treated, and this is consistent. So that's the only part of it that I'm thinking from an why did Arsenal think this was the right thing to do, as opposed to, hey, we could save a few more? Was this just about a few bob, given that you're talking about Jerry and Gunnersaurus and how integral they are to the club? I actually think this might have been a hard decision for them internally, not an easy financial decision. It's probably very emotional all around. I mean, he's part of the fabric. So why did they do it? Was it just a harsh, cold decision? Well, it was certainly that at the end of the day. Was there any redeeming aspect to it? I mean, the only thing I can think is being equitable and being consistent with all your employees so that you can look them all in the face and say, these were our criteria, and look, we have wherever we can be consistent. I don't know.
Yeah, let me just say this. Like, on the human level, it's awful, and I feel terrible for him. This is a person who has just lost their, I presume, exclusive source of income at a very difficult time for that. He's not the only one.
And is he furloughed? Does anybody know?
Yeah, it sounds like the PR that they came back with was said when fans are back, we'll be happy to welcome Gunnersaurus back to the stadium. But it doesn't say specifically that Jerry, the gentleman who
should have
wore
always
the costume,
been. If they've got a massive PR fail, it's that they didn't say, look, Gunnersaurus with other employees as appropriate are going to be furloughed for a while, because they let that story float out there for 24 hours that he was just straight up fired. So that's a massive
I know this is
fail.
cynical, Paul, and I fully admit it's cynical, but like, I get it. Other workers were furloughed, and it sucks for them too. And every extra worker that's furloughed is extra shitty, and one less is one less piece of shitty news. The fact of the matter is, unlike some of those other furloughed workers, this is an iconic part of the club that you're not going to sneak by, that isn't going to be faceless and nameless. And those other workers don't deserve to be faceless and nameless either. I'm not suggesting they do. But to save this de minimis amount of money, to make a move that is clearly going to be a black eye. And I think they were too clever by half, and I'll only say it because they announced this and did this just before deadline day. I think the presumption is deadline day would drown it out. And to be fair, if it weren't for Mesut Ozil, it would have. There'd be very little talk about this today. We'd be celebrating Partey. We'd be thrilled about Partey. We'd be talking deadline day. And the noise around it was meant, they tried to bury this right in front of an avalanche of positive news and news in general. And unfortunately, Mesut Ozil didn't play that game for them. And whatever you think of him doing that, and I don't want to wade into it. You take my point, Paul. Like they got caught out.
I agree.
And now it's a huge black eye. And I look, I understand why you don't want to climb down from something. I almost feel like they have to climb down from this. There's no benefit. There's only drawback.
Yeah. Well, look, the right thing to do we were and are furloughing him, unless it's just not true, in which case it's going to look terrible. So I think they could be. Yeah. So to your point, if this was not a furlough and it wasn't an understanding that they reached with Jerry, then this is bad, because now they've done 180 and their hands caught in the cookie jar and it just looks shitty.
Agreed. Okay. Well, I mean, hopefully the club does the right thing, and hopefully the club does the right thing for all the people, and hopefully this pandemic ends and fans get back to the stadium and the workers get their jobs back. And, this is the kind of stuff that it's bigger than football and it's hard to discuss. And I'm sorry that we have to cover it at all, but it's the world we're living in. And hopefully that world will shift back to something approaching normalcy soon for everybody. Paul's on Twitter. Pause in my pants. Thanks, Pause. Woo-hoo. Tim's on Twitter. Roberto, thanks, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
My name's Elliot Timothy Blackman on Twitter, Yankee Gunner, and I presume many of you will continue to do that. So thank you for taking that direction. We will have Clive will be doing the scouting video with me tomorrow for Thomas Partey for patrons, and the Awar one was great. It just it was Awar, which epic fail. But to be fair, let the patrons vote on who they wanted it to be on, and that's who people picked. So I would like to believe that I am only partially responsible for this epic fail, unlike other epic fails where I am 100% responsible. I want to thank everyone again for joining for the live stream yesterday. That was a hell of a lot of fun. Thank you for that. And more interesting conversations to follow, hopefully. We'll do a lot of cool stuff during this international break, hopefully to keep everybody going through it, but I can't wait to watch Thomas Partey line up next to Ceballos as we bestride the pitch, beating everybody in our path on the way to a title, which is, of course, what is going to happen. So that wraps up the window. The good news is there's another one in about 2 months. So, because we all love that part of the game so much, we get to do it again. And what comes up after the interlull? Well, Thomas Partey gets to face Manchester City, perhaps. We shall see. We love you, and we'll talk to you after Arsenal 10. City, no.